Hi, my name is Dan Abbott. I teach at Southern Maine Community College, and I am making this video from my CAD Graphics class that'll be meeting this fall as a welcome, but also to show you what it's going to be like to take a class online. So we'll be using the the Zoom application for these classes, which I did last semester for the second half of the semester. And after a few little growing pains, it worked out fine. But I wanted to give you a sense of what it will be like. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm actually running a Zoom session now. I'm the only participant. When we have a class, all of you will be available and you can have your images up on the screen as a kind of a grid. But for right now, it's just me. What I'll be doing when I teach these classes is addressing you directly like I'm doing now. But I'm also going to be looking over to the left because I have a monitor over here where I'll be showing some things. I'll be looking on the right. I have another monitor over here. I'll be going back and forth a bit with the two monitors. I might even be using a document camera to draw things out or to sketch things out. And those are all techniques that I'm going to be using to, as much as possible, duplicate what I would do in a standard classroom. What I plan to do, our normal classes meet for 2 hours twice a week. My plan for this class is that we will have a required class session for the first 2-hour block every week. Everyone is expected to be there, required to be there. I'll take attendance. I'll do presentations at that point. You can certainly ask questions. We'll have some interaction, but primarily what I'll be doing is presenting information. The second 2-hour block, I will be just opening up a Zoom session and letting anybody come in who has a question. If you want to come in and just work in lab during that time, and then if something comes up, you can unmute yourself and ask me a question. But I will be here for that entire 2 hours, and that'll give you an opportunity while I'm doing that to ask questions, also to interact with those students if you'd like, and as much as we can to kind of make it feel like a class. I also am making the video because I want to start right off the bat by reinforcing some things that I consider best practices and that we emphasize in our department, the Architectural and Engineering Design Department. I've been teaching at SMCC. This is my 32nd year. I was hired specifically, well, hired to teach classes, but one of the things I was asked to do is to develop a CAD curriculum, a computer-aided design curriculum. I had 4 or 5 years of CAD experience before that, so my experience with computer-aided design goes back quite a ways. In the process of using this software, I have developed some strong opinions about the best way to approach computer-aided design software, and even have written a book on that topic, which we're going to be using in our more advanced classes. It's called AutoCAD Secrets Every User Should Know. I've done a lot of training for companies. I have had a lot of students who have gone to work for companies. I actually worked for Autodesk, the company that makes AutoCAD, the software that we're going to be using, as a consultant and a contractor and a presenter. I presented at their large CAD conference every year for 14 years. So I have a lot of experience and a lot of feedback from people as to what is most effective in using the software. And we're going to be emphasizing those kinds of best practices all semester. And I'm going to use this video as a way to show you what I mean by that and to actually start with a small lesson on approaching the software. So when I've got this thing set up and I'm at home in my home office, this is where I work. It's in a building behind my house that I built, I don't know, 30 years ago. My wife and I each have an office in the building. I have a monitor over here that I'm looking at right now. I'll be using some presentation material on that monitor. I'll also be looking to the right. There's another monitor. You might find me looking over here and looking down when I have a document camera showing something that I'm sketching. We'll be using all those tools in an attempt to make this process as effective as possible for you to learn what you're here to learn. We're going to have fun. I'm going to have fun. I love teaching. I love teaching this material. So we're gonna make the best out of this Zoom thing. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you when I share the screen what you're likely to see. So when I do screen sharing, it'll look like this. And what we're looking at right now is the AutoCAD screen as it looks when you first start AutoCAD. And I'm just going to go through right now and just point out a couple of things. And I'm going to do a quick little drawing based on a model, and I'll show you what that model looks like. This is the AutoCAD screen, and like every CAD program, AutoCAD is based on the Cartesian coordinate system, which means that what you're looking at right now It's an X and Y coordinate system, and we're looking straight down the Z-axis at this. So we're looking at a flat plane. But actually, CAD programs, for the most part, and AutoCAD for sure, is really a three-dimensional program. But for what we're going to do in this class, we're going to be drawing as though we're looking down at the floor and drawing on the floor. The x-axis goes horizontally along the bottom. The y-axis goes vertically along the left-hand side. There are specific coordinate points identified by the software as we go along. Those coordinate points are known as X, Y, Z coordinates. We will be dealing with that to some extent, but for right now, we're just going to be drawing on a flat surface. Now, there are things in AutoCAD called toolbars, and what I'm going to do right now, if you'll just bear with me, I'm going to stop sharing and pause this because I need to do something. And I'm back to sharing my screen. All right, now AutoCAD and most CAD programs have all kinds of ways for you to enter information. The primary one in AutoCAD is this ribbon across the top. That ribbon has all kinds of tools in it, and we'll be looking at those tools in detail as we go along. It's also possible to use toolbars, which is what I have right here. Pull that away and take a look at it. That's not normally showing in AutoCAD when you first start it up. I have that turned on because I like to use it. The other thing that AutoCAD has that some software does not, but that I like a great deal, is something called a command line. Command line is at the bottom of the screen when you first start AutoCAD. The command line is where you literally type commands. And so if you know, for instance, that to draw a line, you need to have the line command, you can go to the command line, type the word line, and that will issue the line command. The commands themselves then show up on the screen. Now I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to do a couple of things because I don't really like having the command line floating. So I'm going to what's called docking the command line. So now it looks like this. Next thing I'm going to do is to take that command line, I'm going to move it to the top of the screen because I find that it's easier for you as I'm drawing to see what I'm doing if it's at the top of the screen than it is at the bottom. I also am not going to be using this ribbon for a while because it's just so complex and it's so hard for people when they first start using this software to navigate. And I'm just going to close it up. I'll use it if I need to, I'll open it up, but for the most part, I'm going to be sticking to writing or typing commands in here and going from there. I'm also not crazy about this dark screen. I don't think it's as easy for you to look at. So I'm going to go and I'm going to change some options in AutoCAD. And the options I'm going to change, just a couple. I'm going to go to a lighter scheme. And so now everything at the top gets a little lighter. I think it gets much easier to read. I'm going to change the color of my background. I'm going to change the color of my background from this default, which is sort of black or near black. I can say, no, I want the background to be white instead. I'll go ahead and apply that. I'm going to close it up. I've also already done this, but I've got my font, the text that's going to show up right here. I've set it up a little bit higher. Now, you don't have to worry about any of these things, but I just want to show you that there is an interface in all CAD software that can be modified to suit your own interests. And this, to me, works better, and that's why I'm using this interface. Now, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to pause this one more time. And I have to do that by stopping. And I am back. What I'm doing right now, actually, in part, is I'm testing out this system to see how well it's going to work. It's a little different than what I've had set up before. So what I'm doing when I pause is I'm going and making a little change here and there just to make things work a little better. So this is what a CAD screen looks like. And what it is, for the most part, is a big drawing area. And that drawing area is the place where you're going to actually create geometry. So it won't be a big shock to you to know that if I wanted to draw a circle, I could draw a circle by doing that. So we'll erase that circle right now, and I'll come back to that in just a second. So let's take a look at what kinds of things we'll be using this software for. Well, we're going to use it to document design. So I'm going to take a look at a very simple part, and that very simple part is over here on the right. We're going to call it a rod support. And the reason we're starting with that is it's a fairly simple part to draw. It reinforces certain techniques for drawing, but it also introduces the concept of orthographic projection, which is how technical drawings are laid out. And there's certain rules that you must follow when you lay those things out. The actual drawing of this part This is what I'm showing right now is what's known as an isometric view. The actual drawing of that part is going to look like this. You're going to have a view of this part looking at it directly from what's called a front view. And if you take a look, the front view in this case, that's the part right there from the front. If I were to turn that into straight lines, from the front that part looks like this, and we are going to duplicate that using AutoCAD by drawing some lines and arcs and circles. Now, that's what it looks like isometrically. If you look at the top here, this is a view of what that part looks like from above, looking down on it. So if I were to open this up, hold it in my hand and turn it around for you, the top view would look like that. And if you take a look over here, except for those lines right there, which are tangent edges, those tangent edges would not be drawn in a drawing, and you can see I did not draw them over here. Now, one thing you'll notice is on this view over here, there's these dashed lines, and they're known as hidden lines. Those hidden lines actually represent something internal that you can't see. In this case, they represent that hole that goes through this. Well, on the part itself, if I were to do that, now you can see that there are hidden lines going through. Again, just ignore those lines for right now. That's the way that software represents things three-dimensionally, and not the way we do it in drawing. Looking at this as an isometric drawing, again, it looks like that. Let's go back and look at it as an actual solid object. It looks like this. So that would be called the top view. That would be called the front view. And there's also a right side view. If I take a look over here at the right side view looks like that. If you look at this right side view right here, you'll notice that it's an outline that is L-shaped. And the thing you can't do in a view like this is to represent that little arc here. You see that arc kind of falls away. Look over here, you can see, because it shows you a little bit of lighting, exactly what that would look like. But when you look straight at it from the right-hand side, you're going to draw the outline of that shape as straight lines. So you're projecting that edge right there forward onto a plane, because it actually appears back here, appears back in this area. So this is known as orthographic projection because lines are projected onto flat planes. Orthographic means it's a straight line projection. So you'll notice the top of this view lines right up with the top of that. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to sketch this or draw this in AutoCAD and just show you how the tools work in AutoCAD and how I would set it up. So let's go back to AutoCAD itself. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a few layers. We'll talk more about layers later, but I'm making layers because I want to layer for my object lines, the lines that represent the edges of the part itself. And I'm going to make those white. I'm going to leave them continuous, and I'm going to change something called the line weight. And I'm changing the line weight so that the lines for object lines are thicker than all the other lines, which is one of the rules of orthographic projection. I'm going to make them 0.4 millimeters thick. Now I'm going to go back to my layers. I'm going to make another layer here, and I'm going to have a layer for hidden lines so that I can have a layer that I can put those dashed lines on. And we'll make it a different color so that it's easier to see what I'm doing. And the color I'm going to select for those is blue. They aren't going to be continuous. So instead of using continuous lines, I'm going to load a different line type. Now again, this is all new, and I don't expect you to be absorbing all of this. I just want to give you a sort of overview of the kinds of things we'll be doing. I need to load those line types. And so line types have names, and there's a whole lot of line types here. All we care about for today is object lines, hidden lines, center lines, 3 line types. I'm going to go down, I'm going to find the hidden line types, and I'm using one called Hidden 2 because that's the one I prefer. Because I know I'm also going to be using a center line type, I'm going to hold down my control key, and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to select center 2 as well. And then I'm going to load both of those so they're available, but I'm only going to use one of them for the current layer. So I've just set up a layer now. And a layer is really like a clear piece of plastic on which I'm drawing, and I can put whatever I want on. Just so you can see what I'm doing a little better, I'm going to open this up. So right now, I have a layer that I'm going to draw my object lines on. They're going to be black. By the way, it says white. It's sort of an historical anomaly. AutoCAD, when it was first developed, had one color background, which was black. So standard lines had to be white to be shown. But because when you plot them, they're going to be black, they call them white, but they actually plot black. Just don't worry about it. It's white, but it's not really white. it's going to look black. Now, those are continuous lines, 0.4 because they're thicker. I'm going to have hidden lines that are blue. They're going to have a dashed line type, but I also don't want them to be 0.4. I want them to be half of that, which is 0.2, because they are not object lines. Now I'm going to make one other layer. This layer is going to be called center. I'm going to go over here and I'll make the center layer magenta. I'm going to have you, when you do your work, never use red as a color, because I'm going to use red when I do red lines on your work. In other words, when I put notes on the things you turn in and say, no, these are things that you need to address that you didn't do correctly yet. And that will happen. If you submit something that doesn't meet the standard, you'll be given a chance to do it again. In fact, you'll be required to do it again. So I'm going to use a color called magenta. And I'm now going to change the line type from hidden to center to, and I'm going to leave the line weight the same, and then I'll close up this layer box just to get it out of our way. Now this is all simply to prepare to do my drawing. Now the first thing I'm going to do is draw on a layer called the object layer. And if I look at that assignment, it doesn't really say on the assignment, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the corner of that in a specific location. I'm going to use the Cartesian coordinate system to do that. And I'm going to put that at 2.25 comma 2.25. So 2¼ units in the x-axis, 2¼ units in the y-axis. Now, I'm going to start by drawing a line. Now, if you use the ribbon, and a lot of people do, there's the line command right there. It shows like a line. You hold your cursor over it. It tells you it's going to draw a line. You wait long enough. It tells you how to draw the line with it. Gives you all kinds of information. And that's how I'm going to expect you to develop some idea of how to actually put certain kinds of entities in the drawing, by looking up here and finding them. But for right now, just to clarify and to simplify what we're looking at, I'm going to tell AutoCAD, with this little alias or nickname, which is the letter L, press enter, it knows I'm going to draw a line. It's asking me for the first point. I can randomly pick a point, but I want to be a little more accurate, so I'm going to type 2.25, which is the x coordinate, comma 2.25, which is the y coordinate, and now that's where it's starting relative to 0, 0, which is right down here. Now you're going to use some tools that just make this so much easier, and one of them is called tracking. If I bring my mouse down like this, and you see those green dots going off to the right, that means I'm going to draw a line that is exactly horizontal, which in Cartesian coordinate terms means it's got a 0 degree angle. 0 degrees is directly to the right. The width of that part was 4. So I'm going to type in a 4. Now I'm zooming with the middle wheel on my mouse. And now I'm going to go straight up. And the height of this was 2.5. I'm going to type in a 2.5. Now I'm going to come back. Now I could type in a 4, but I'm going to use some tools, again, that make things so much easier and so much more accurate. So instead, I'm moving my cursor down. I'm hovering over the end. And when I do, I've acquired, and you can see the little green cross there. I've acquired a line. So I have a tracking line that goes horizontally. And if I move my cursor right above that other little mark, I have 2 tracking lines. Left click, and now I'm drawing directly to the intersection of those lines, which means I've drawn a line that's exactly 4 units long. Now I can go back down here and just kind of hover over this, and I'm picking up what's called a running object snap. In other words, it's not going to draw the line at an angle like that. It's going to snap it over to the end of the line that I'm hovering over. When I do that now, I have a perfectly precisely drawn rectangle that is the shape I want it to be based on this drawing. In other words, I've made a rectangle like this. Now I don't have the arcs in here yet, but what I'm doing right now is just boxing in that overall shape. Now I'll leave that there for a minute. I'll come back to it in a second. I'm going to go back to the line command. Now this time I'm going to say I'm going to draw something that lines right up with this. Oop, I mistyped something. Lines right up with this. So I'm hovering over it and going to the right. Well, this is orthographic projection, and the rule is that if I've got a right side view, it has to line right up with the front view. Ortho means straight. It means straight line from the bottom over and from the top over. I want 2 inches of space between this. Why? Well, I'm going to put dimensions later on. I want to leave enough room. Does it have to be 2 inches? No, it has to be enough room for the dimensions you're going to put in later. So I'm going to just type a 2. I've hovered over that endpoint, and I'm just going to type a 2, and now I'm starting a line that's 2 inches away from that corner. The width of this is 2.25, I type that. Now the height has to be the same as the height of the front view. So instead of remembering that the front view is 2.5 and typing that in, I'm going to hover over that corner, come back over here, and when I get the two tracking lines, it's exactly lined up with the top. It goes over a ½ inch, 0.5. It goes down 2 inches. It goes over so it's the same length as this one. I go back down and get the end point of that. Now I've just boxed in a front view and a right side view. I'm going to go back over here. I just press the space bar, which repeats my last command. I'm hovering over this corner. I want another 2-inch space, so I'm going to type in a 2. I want it to be the same length as the front view, not because I want it to be, but because it has to be. I'm going to go up, and this time I need to type it in, 2.25. And then I'm going to come back over, do the same thing here. And again, I'm just boxing in this view. And I come down here and go to the endpoint. Now I've got the front view boxed in, the top view boxed in, and the right side view boxed in. And that's where I'm going with this. Let me just make a small adjustment here. So I've got a rectangle representing the boundaries of that top view, a rectangle representing the boundaries of the front view, a rectangle representing the boundaries of the right side view. So now I'm going to go in and make a few changes. And by the way, I've got thick lines, and I've just turned on line weights just so you can see these are my object lines. Now I tend to draw without being able to see the thickness because it kind of gets in my way. But I can turn that on and off anytime I want. So now let's put the line that goes across here. Go back in the line command, hovering here, coming across, and now it lines right up with the right side view because it has to, because it's the same feature. So I've got that line. I've got another line up here that starts a ½ inch down. I just made a mistake. I'm going to hover right here. That line starts a ½ inch down and then goes across to here. Now again, I've drawn that accurately. And by the way, everything I've done has been accurate to 16 decimal places. And it's accurate because I'm using the tools built into a CAD system that make it possible to draw accurately and to draw quickly. I'm going to speed things up a little bit. I'm going to draw a circle, and I want that circle to be 1 inch above. I'm going to draw a circle, and I want that circle to be 1 inch, and I'm doing something wrong, and I'm going to find out why. I'm going to draw a circle, hovering over this, and I'm going straight up. I'm typing in a 1. There it is. I'm not exactly sure what I did, but I wasn't holding my cursor in the right place because I was looking at the camera instead of looking at my screen. So it's going to happen once in a while because I do want to address you directly. But anyway, I'm going to type the letter D and say I want a diameter, and I want the diameter to be 1. Now I'm going to draw another circle, and it's going to be right here, and I want the radius of that to be 1. Now I'm going to use a command called trim, and I'm going to use the trim command to get rid of that and to get rid of this. I'm also going to use a command called fillet, and I'm going to use the fillet command to put an arc here and here, and that's a tangent arc. That line right there stops, and then there's an arc that's tangent to it. The arc stops, and then there's a line tangent to it. I have another arc over here. Now, my object lines for this, the lines that represent the outside edges, the ones I want to be thick, if you take a look, I've got all my object lines drawn in here. Oh, that's not true. I've got 2 right there I didn't draw yet. So let's go put those in. I'm going to draw a line, hovering down from here, that intersection, straight down to here. Those 2 lines represent the same feature in the top view as that corner, so they have to line up. Now I've got all my object lines drawn in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch my layers, and I'm going to switch the layers to a hidden layer. When I go to the hidden layer, I'm going to put in some hidden lines. And the hidden lines I'm putting in include those 2 hidden lines right there that represent that circle. Those 2 hidden lines right there that represent that circle. And then the back of this cutout right here is represented by that hidden line right there. Just to clarify that, that hole goes all the way through this part. That arc goes back to here. If I were to look at this from the right side view, and then I tell this is SolidWorks, by the way. I'm using it just because it's a nice convenient way to show you 3D models. Let's see the hidden lines here. There's a hidden line right there, and that hidden line right there represents the back of that arc. The hidden lines up here represent the hole that goes through. When you're looking at it directly, there's one line here. Now, again, that line, because of SolidWorks, that's a tangent edge. Just ignore it. Now, let's go back here. So I'm using hidden lines now. So I'm going to draw a line, and I want that line to line right up with that circle. So I've already told AutoCAD that I want to automatically snap to the quadrant of that circle. So all I have to do is hover over that. I get that little diamond. It means that's the quadrant of the circle. Now I take the tracking line up, go to here, and I've got my hidden line drawn in exactly the right place. Do the same thing going to the right. I'm going to put a line from here to here. I'm going to hover over this and go to the right, put a line from here to here. And I'm going to draw a line that goes back 1 inch for the hidden line representing the back of that. Now those are all my lines. The only thing I have left to do is put in some center lines. So I'm going to put in some center lines. And when I do the center lines, I'm going to start by setting a variable to a value. And we'll talk about this later on. But all I've done is said I want my center mark to look a certain way. So I'm now going to put a center mark right here. A center mark is a little cross at the center itself, and then some extension lines if necessary. Well, I actually don't need this one, so I'm going to delete it. I also can't have these overlapping like that. That's just not the way it works. So I'm going to go over here and put a little gap in there. I'm going to go over here and put a little gap in here. Size of that gap doesn't have to be exact, but it should be about 1/16 of an inch. So that's what a center mark looks like right here. I'm going to put another center mark down here, and I'm just typing in nicknames, aliases for putting things in. And again, all of these commands can be found on the ribbon, but we're going to tell you what the names of the commands are because it's going to be really useful as we go down through all the other classes you'll be taking for you to know what those are. So now I've got another center mark here with my extension lines, but I do want something here, a center line that shows the center axis of this part. I want that center line here, I want a center line here, and I want a center line there, and they show the axis of a cylindrical feature. So to do that, I'm going to actually just copy. I'm going to copy these lines right here, from here down to here. What I'm doing, there we go. Tracking down. I'm going to copy those lines, and I got a little more than I needed, so I'm going to get rid of this. So I've copied that down. Now I'm going to copy those lines. Oop. I erased that. I just typed U and spacebar. It undid the mistake I just made. I'd like to have a U spacebar undo command in my truck. So if I back into the trailer tongue on my boat, I can undo that. But anyway, I'm going to now go back to copy, and I'm going to copy those lines right there from here. I'm going to put those over here. So now I've got that center line exactly where I want it. And I'll do another copy of the center line, pick it up here, bring it up and do this, put that in place. So now if you take a look, I have drawn what you saw here and duplicated it. And the only thing I have left to do is put in dimensions, which I'm not going to do right now because the purpose of this isn't to give you an entire lesson. The purpose of this is just to show you what the process is going to be like. Now, earlier than this probably, but at some point when I'm doing one of these presentations, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to see all of you and I'm going to ask you individually, did you understand what I just did? I'll call you by name. I'll say, Olivia, did you understand what I just did? And Olivia will either say yes or no, I didn't. I just didn't get a couple of things you just did. That's the point at which I expect you to ask questions. Although, if at any time I do something and you're not sure what I just did, I'm going to ask you to just unmute yourself in Zoom and say something so that I know that I need to stop and review something. That's how we're going to do as best as we can duplicate a class. So there are a couple of ways that you can say everything's fine, that you understand it. Now, I'm hoping that you'll have your video on because I really want to see your faces. It's easier for me. I can get a better sense of whether or not people understand things. But I know some of you won't have a camera. Some of you just don't like being on video for whatever reason. So there is a little thing called a reactor in Zoom that allows you to just kind of do a icon thumbs up. So that's how I'm going to actually check to see that people understand what's going on. Because unlike a classroom where if I'm teaching and I look out across the room and I see somebody go like that, I know they didn't understand what I just did, but it's really hard in a Zoom class to keep track of everybody, to see for those things, to look for those cues. So anyway, that's what the class is going to be like. We're going to cover a lot of ground. You're going to be good with this software when you're done, but you're going to start right off the bat by drawing precisely and accurately. We've placed a lot of people in jobs. In fact, I just talked to somebody who asked for a reference yesterday, and they were telling me that what they like about our graduates is that they show up prepared, they know how to use software, and they apply what they consider best practices, i.e. drawing with precision and accuracy, period. So listen, I'm really looking forward to this class. I can't wait to meet you all. Wish we were going to be in a room together, but we're not. You're going to do fine. If this is your first class and you're a little bit nervous, please don't be. You're going to enjoy this, I think. You will have to have AutoCAD installed on a computer. The way to do that is to go to the website for Autodesk students. And I have that on our learning management system. I have a description of how to do that, and I'll send you an email as well. If you want to get started, though, right now, let me share the screen one more time. So quickly, let's go look at my screen, and we'll take a look at the website that you'd have to go to. All right, so here we've got Firefox. So if you type in Autodesk, which is the name of the company that makes AutoCAD, students, you should get the AutoCAD Student Community free software resource. Every one of you is entitled to download any software that Autodesk makes. You go in here to the education piece, and there's a little video. Oh, they've changed this page just a little bit. Education, get products. So what we want to do is get products. What you're going to have to do first, though, is you're going to have to go through and you're going to have to make so go to Get Started. When you go to Get Started, you're going to have to register at the software. You're going to have to put in an email address that has an edu extension. Go through that whole process. When you're done doing that, you're going to have an account. And once you've got an account, then you can start downloading software. There's no cost to this. This is all something you can do for free. And you're going to go down and then just go to the AutoCAD site. You're going to download AutoCAD. Now, there is an AutoCAD for the Mac. It is not the same as AutoCAD for Windows, and people who try to use it get very confused in this class. It's not as robust as the AutoCAD version for Windows. There are several hundred things that are not in it that are in the AutoCAD version for Windows. Just don't recommend it. I recommend that you use the AutoCAD version for Windows. If you have a Mac, you've got two choices. You can use Boot Camp or Parallels, and you can run Windows software on your Mac. But that does require that you purchase software and probably requires that you purchase the Windows operating system. You might be better off if you've got a Mac, finding a refurbished or used Windows computer that's, doesn't have to be much of a computer for this class, and then using the Windows version. You'll find it much easier to follow along. But you do need to have a computer, and you do need to download software to do it. If you don't have a computer, send me an email and I'll see if I can find you one. And if you have trouble with the software and downloading it, then go ahead and send me an email as well. Let me stop sharing once again. That's it. That's enough. I mean, this is a relatively lengthy video, a little longer than I meant it to be. But again, it's to say, welcome to the class. This is about what it's going to look like, give you a sense of what's going to happen. And then when you show up in a couple of weeks, you'll be maybe a little better ready to get started. Okay. I am going to end this meeting right now, and I look forward to seeing you.